One of the last things I want to comment about with the book publishing industry is just that the majority of books, I said, are from the five big publishing houses, and even within their probably smaller divisions, and there's kind of niche markets like higher education, your paperback, like your Harlequin romance novels, have some of the big publishers, and so really to a very large degree, even if beyond those big five, there's probably another five or six that are pretty big in certain areas, or they're subsidiaries of those big five, and so their sales are actually counted in those big five. But what happens is that one of the problems is that with anything, like you have a very steep hurdle to get new titles, and so there's a little bit of some of the complaints that will be perennial throughout all of the mass media. One of the complaints by a lot of people is the issue with the fact that movies, books, TV shows, everything seems to be very homogenous. It's like if it sells and it's going to work, then we'll sell it. And books really should have access to titles maybe that aren't going to sell a lot because they're important things for people to read. They're personal parts of personal development. They're things that are issues that other people should be concerned about, but we can't get the sales out there because the big publishers won't give them access. And so some of the complaints that come along is that ability to actually get those books out there. Now, there's an idea here within that we don't talk about. I probably should actually make this an exam question, a midterm exam question. But there's a concept of what's called integration, vertical and horizontal or integration. And vertical integration, it's up and down. And the vertical integration comes in a big part in like TV and movies. And vertical integration is like the idea that like if you say you make a movie, well, you need a script. And then, the script needs to be sent over to a production company. And the production company hires a director and editors, and then they make the movie and they direct and edit. Then you need a distribution company, and then you have the movie theaters that sell it, and then you have the DVD producers and HBO and the TV shows that do, like the major, not made for TV, but the, like the daytime, we're going to air this old movie during the day on, one of the cable networks kind of things, or we're going to stream it on Netflix, things like that. Well, the idea of integration is the idea that one company buys that entire chain vertically, where they own a company that script writes, they own a company that produces, they own a company that directs and edits, they own a company that distributes, they own the theaters, they own Netflix. And so things like Netflix, if they develop in-house instead of with a separate company, they actually hire writers, and they do it, and they go the entire process. That's called vertical integration. And the idea there is the only way you get into that vertical process is you have to be part of that company. And so some people say if you actually allow for 4 or 5 different writing companies, and you don't allow like the people who produce to own the writing companies, then the producers have to then look at the writing companies, and you actually produce more writing, and then they shop it out to the 4 or 5 producers. And then those 4 or 5 producers if they don't own the distribution, then they have to actually produce a product that's better so that they can get a distributor to buy their product. And the distributor now has to worry because they don't own the movie houses, so they have to work with the movie houses to actually produce products. And so the idea there is you get a more diverse and a better thing. And whereas if you own that entire process, you make all the money the entire way up. But if you're going to start the process, you want the process to finish, right? And so you're only going to get things that are actually going to make money the entire process. The other idea is horizontal integration. And horizontal integration is the idea, like the big 5 publishing houses, where these 5 companies own all of the publishing. They own textbook, they own, romance novels, paperbacks, mass media. They own how-to books, trade publications, things like that. And so they kind of cover the gamut. They may not own control the authors. They may not own the bookstores. They may not own the shipping and the distribution systems. They may not own, their secondary markets and stuff. But they control horizontally the company. Well, the issue is that, because of a lot of conglomeration, a lot of this bringing of things together, because companies own so much, they have to put a lot of more money into it. And so what happens is they tend to want to buy books, the big ones want books that they're going to then be able to market. Well, if you own vertically the integration, you own a publishing house and you own the bookstore. If you own the bookstore, you probably don't want your competitor's book to get a better spot. If you have a book coming out on October 1st or November 1st or December 1st, and your competitor has a book coming out that same day, which book do you want on the first newsstand when you walk into the place? Your book, right? And so you end up marketing and getting your book to sell better. Well, what happens though is if you're an individual bookseller, a book distributor, they don't get the same placement, they don't get the same sales, they don't get the same access to floor space. And so what happens is that they are kind of left out of the marketplace. And so that's kind of one of the issues is if you're going to spend all the money, you want to make sure yours gets in its place. But the other thing is you also don't want a book that's not going to sell. And so you only want things that are proven to have worked. You only want books that sell a lot. And so what happens is there's some things that happen with this that end up kind of limiting the number of new and diverse titles that can get into the marketplace because of the fact that they control the integration. Now, in this case, the 5 booksellers don't own the bookstores and other things, but they do have strong relationships, and they're able to negotiate better floor space and physical retailers. They're able to know how to market it, and so they know how to promote a book and get the book out to the right people and get it used, and whereas the individual doesn't have the same access to those things. As a result, some of the complaints is, you get some types of books that are all focused on, because all this is very expensive to maintain these large corporations and apparatus, that they put a big emphasis on a blockbuster mentality, meaning they have to sell a lot of books fast or they're not going to do it. And so if a book isn't going to sell 1 million copies or isn't going to outsell itself the first day, they're not going to do it. And that kind of leads to things like then the other concern, at least a lot of what they call instant books, where these are books that aren't really all that well thought up. They're just books that they know capture a moment. Right now, at the moment, maybe there's a political issue with healthcare, or there's an issue with, immigration, or there's an issue with abortion or whatever. And if that becomes a hot button issue, if they can get a book out there that hits the current, Donald Trump and abortion, Donald Trump and healthcare, Donald Trump and immigration, right? And then get a book out there with that title, you're all in book, the whole story behind the story kind of book, people will buy it. Is it a well-researched? Is it well documented? Is it a great book? No. But that's a book that's going to make them money because it hits the market. And so what happens is one of the complaints is that those books are not necessarily of any real depth, and they kind of diminish the book industry overall. And then the other thing is with books, there's a bigger emphasis on the idea that books make money, but the bigger money now is almost to be had on the secondary market. And so one of the things if you do the discussion board about going to the bookstore, one of the things I'd like for you to look at is look at the fact that if you go to a bookstore, there's a lot of things that aren't even books that are in high population areas. And the reason is because, if you sell Harry Potter makes more money in movie and shirts and hats and scarves and, Harry Potter, figurines and dolls and all kinds of secondary market things. And so those things become very important. And so a company, when it's making a book, it is also looking at, are we going to have a secondary market for this? Are we going to be able to have the ability to market this and make a movie? Are we going to have the ability? And so what happens is that has become a very big thing. Before they even publish a book, a lot of times they've already sold the rights to make it into a movie. And what happens is, of course, when we talk about movies as a mass medium, oftentimes movie companies are buying movies for no other reason, the rights to make them, for no other reason than to keep other people from making the movies, because they don't want the competition, but yet they also don't want to put the money into making them because they're so focused on making money. And so those are some of the criticisms that come up that you can get from the book as well.